What's going on?
Miss Miller, I'm sorry for coming in without asking.
Am I fired? Is this some strange company thing?
Sarah stopped cold at her front door. Her keys slipped in her hand as she stared into her kitchen. "What's going on?" she whispered. A man stood at her sink, washing dishes. Not just any man. Mark Sterling, her boss, the CEO of Sterling Global Tech, one of the most powerful men in America. His expensive suit jacket was neatly placed on a chair, beside her daughter's homework. His sleeves were rolled up. Soap bubbles covered his hands. "Ms. Miller," he said calmly, like they were in a boardroom. "I'm sorry for coming in without asking." Her heart raced. "Am I fired?" she asked quietly. Is this some strange company thing?" For the first time, Mark smiled a little. "No, but I understand why you'd think that." He dried his hands and picked up a folder from the counter. "I found this in your desk yesterday." Sarah's chest tightened. Inside the folder was a crayon drawing. Her daughter Maya had drawn it. Sarah was bent over a laptop, crying. In the corner, a small child sat alone with toys. At the bottom, in shaky handwriting, it read, "Mommy is working late again." "I didn't understand before," Mark said softly, "how much this job was taking from you." Earlier that day, Sarah had been staring at her computer screen for hours. The office was empty. Everyone had gone home. Her phone buzzed again. Another reminder from Maya's after-school program. Then a voice came from the doorway. "Miller? You're still here." Brad Whitaker, her department head, leaned against the door. He looked relaxed, confident, untouchable. "Just finishing the projections," Sarah said, forcing a smile. "Love the dedication," Brad said, checking his watch. "Your daughter's waiting again, right?" "Maya." Before she could answer, he added, "I'll need the Henderson account changes by tomorrow morning." Sarah swallowed. That wasn't on the schedule. Brad's face hardened. "If you can't keep up, I can replace you." "I'll do it," she said quickly. "That's my girl," he said, smiling without warmth. Back in the kitchen, Sarah finally lowered the umbrella she'd been holding like protection. "How did you even get in here?" she asked. Mark sighed. "Your neighbor recognized me from a magazine on your table. She asked me to watch the house until you got back." He paused. "I didn't plan to clean, but I couldn't just sit here." Mark sat down and opened his briefcase. "I reviewed your department," he said. "You were given almost half again as much work as everyone else. Shorter deadlines, bigger pressure." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "And the promotion you were denied," he continued. "It went to someone with less experience and weaker results." "Brad said I wasn't committed enough," she whispered. Mark's voice grew firm. "He lied. He believes single mothers aren't reliable. He used your work to make himself look good." He looked at her. "That happened under my leadership. And I'm sorry." Just then, the door burst open. "Mommy," Maya shouted, waving a paper. "I got a gold star." She went to Mark when she saw him. "You're the man from the big building," she said. Mark laughed. "I am. And I hear your mom works very hard." He handed Sarah a document. "This is your promotion," he said. "Director of Operations. Effective immediately. With back pay." Sarah couldn't speak. "And this," he continued, "is bigger than you. Flexible work hours. No emails after 6 p.m. childcare support. I want you to help lead it." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "Why did you come here yourself?" she asked. Mark looked around the small kitchen. "Because I needed to see the life behind the work." A year later, the company changed. Other companies followed. But the biggest change happened at home. Mark became part of their lives. He learned that Maya's favorite game was impossible to win. Sarah learned that powerful men can still love burnt grilled cheese. A year later, Maya drew another picture. 3 people standing under a tree. No tears, just smiles. The following week, the atmosphere at Sterling Global was electric. Word had leaked that Brad Whitaker was under investigation. But the full extent of the shakeup was saved for the quarterly leadership summit. The boardroom was a cathedral of glass and steel, overlooking the Puget Sound. 20 of the company's top executives sat around a polished mahogany table. Sarah sat at the far end, her laptop open, feeling the weight of a dozen curious stares. Brad sat opposite her, his foot tapping an arrogant, nervous rhythm. Mark Sterling stood at the head of the table. "Before we begin our fiscal review, we need to discuss our most undervalued asset, human capital," he signaled to Sarah. She stood, her voice steady. "Based on the new internal audit, We've identified a labor leakage in the North American division. One department, in particular, showed a 40% disparity in project allocation. She hit a key, and a graph projected onto the wall. This data shows that high-performing employees with caregiving responsibilities were being given double the workload of their peers, Sarah continued, looking directly at Brad. Specifically, the Henderson and Kumar accounts were used as pressure tests, unnecessary assignments given with impossible deadlines to create a paper trail of struggling performance. Brad let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Is this what we're doing now, Mark? Letting mid-level managers use colorful charts to complain about working hard? This is a high-performance culture. If Sarah can't handle the heat, then let her. The heat was a fabrication, Brad, Mark interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous chill. I personally reviewed the email servers. You stripped Sarah's support staff for the Singapore project and moved them to Thomas Reynolds' team, a man who, the data shows, spent 4 afternoons a week at a golf club while Sarah worked until midnight. The room went dead silent. Brad's face shifted from a smug tan to a sickly gray. You didn't just mismanage, Mark continued. You weaponized the company's goals to punish a mother for having a life. Outside these walls, you told me she wasn't ready for the vice president's role. The data says she was doing the work of 3 vice presidents. Mark turned to the room. Effective immediately, Brad Whitaker is relieved of his duties. Sarah Miller is our new director of operations. Her first task is a complete audit of every department head's promotion history. Brad scrambled to grab his briefcase, muttering about legal counsel, but the security team was already at the door. As he was let out, the silence in the room broke into a cautious, then thunderous, round of applause. A month later, the lobby of Sterling Global looked different. The cold, minimalist marble was still there, but in the center stood a sleek, white service droid. A group of interns stood around it, laughing. Hey, Sterling bot, one asked. Why did the Pioneer cross the road? The robot whirred, its digital eyes blinking. To get to this settlement. But I prefer this Silicon Valley. Mark and Sarah watched from the mezzanine. You actually did it, she said, leaning against the railing. You had the engineers program in a humor module. I told you, Mark said, looking at her with an expression that was no longer just professional. Your daughter has a keen eye for what's missing. A company without a sense of humor or a heart is just a machine. I'm tired of running a machine. That evening, for the first time in 3 years, Sarah left the office at 4:30 p.m. She didn't feel the crushing guilt that usually sat in her chest. When she arrived home, Mark's SUV was already in the driveway. He wasn't cleaning the kitchen this time. He was in the backyard, looking profoundly confused while Maya tried to explain the rules of extreme tag. No, Mark, you can't stand on the grass. The grass is the quantum zone. You have to hop on the patio stones or you lose a life. Mark looked up and saw Sarah. He looked exhausted, his expensive tie discarded on a lawn chair. But his smile was the brightest thing in the yard. Help, he mouthed. Sarah laughed, setting her bag down. She realized then that the promotion was a career saver. But the man who was willing to hop on patio stones, just to make a 7-year-old happy, that was the lifesaver. As the sun set over the Seattle skyline, the formidable CEO and the single mom sat on the back porch. The manila folder with the sad drawing was gone, replaced by a new one on the fridge, a picture of 3 people, a house, and a robot that told very bad jokes. 3 months later, the Sterling Miller shift was not just a rule in an employee handbook. It was a revolution. The big business magazines were calling it the human-first model, and every major tech company was desperately trying to copy the culture Sarah had spent months pouring her heart into. The annual Sterling Global Gala used to be a stiff, boring event in a stuffy ballroom. This year, Sarah moved it to a botanical garden under a glowing glass roof. Instead of forced small talk, the air was filled with smooth jazz and the sound of real laughter from people who weren't afraid to enjoy their jobs anymore. Sarah stood on the balcony in a deep emerald silk gown. She felt like a completely different person from the exhausted mom who used to eat protein bars for dinner in a cold, lonely cubicle. Hiding out, a voice asked. Mark stepped out from the shadows of the garden trellis, looking handsome in a dark tuxedo. He wasn't the intimidating Mr. Kim she'd first met. His shoulders were relaxed, and his eyes were soft, Just thinking, Sarah said, looking down at the happy crowd. A year ago, half of them wanted to quit. Now, they're here because they actually want to be. They're here because of you, Mark said, moving closer. I just signed the checks. You gave this place a soul. Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, slightly worn manila folder. I still carry this, he confessed. Whenever I start thinking too much like a CEO and not enough like a human, I look at Maya's drawing. It reminds me what actually matters. He turned to her, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. But lately, I've realized something. Our family-first policy saved the company, Sarah. But my own home, it still feels like a cold office. It's quiet. It's efficient. But it's empty. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Mark, I don't want to just be the guy who helped fix your career, he said, his voice dropping to a low, steady hum. I want to be the one helping with the science projects. I want to be the one who knows all the quantum zone rules by heart. I don't want to be the man you report to. I want to be the man you come home to. He took her hand, his thumb gently brushing over her knuckles. I'm not good at casual, and I don't think you are either. I love the company we built, Sarah, but I love the life we've started at your kitchen table so much more. Sarah smiled, the last of her professional walls finally crumbling. She reached up, gently straightening his bow tie. You know, for a genius who speaks 5 languages, you're a little slow to get to the point. Mark laughed, and this time it wasn't polished or controlled. It was real, the kind that slipped out when your heart was already ahead of you. She felt it more than she heard it. He moved closer, close enough that she could feel his breath, close enough that the world seemed to soften. When his forehead rested against hers, she didn't pull away. She didn't want to. I was just waiting for the data to be conclusive, he said, almost shy now. And, she whispered, afraid to break the moment, afraid of what the answer might do to her heart. He didn't rush it. He just looked at her, the way he always did lately, like she mattered more than anything else in the room. The results are in, he said quietly. And somehow, I fell for you without even trying. Her chest tightened, because she understood. He had fallen in love slowly somewhere between washing dishes beside her at midnight, teasing her when she was tired, and noticing the way she kept showing up for everyone even when no one showed up for her. He loved her in the ordinary moments, in the unguarded ones. And she had been gone longer than she wanted to admit. She fell in love the day she realized she trusted him. The day his presence stopped feeling impressive and started feeling safe. The day his kindness stopped surprising her and became something she depended on. When he kissed her, it wasn't rushed or dramatic. It was gentle, certain, like he was choosing her, again and again. The kind of kiss that said, I'm not going anywhere. It wasn't about sparks or perfect timing. It was about a year of shared laughter, tired nights, small acts of care, and a love that grew quietly until it became impossible to ignore. When they finally pulled apart, neither of them spoke right away. They didn't need to. Something had settled between them, steady, warm, certain. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. And for the first time in a long while, her thoughts were calm. No fear, no second-guessing, just peace. Mark felt it too. The weight he didn't even know he had been carrying seemed to lift. Loving her didn't feel complicated or fragile. It felt right. Like choosing her was the easiest decision he had ever made. He held her a little tighter, not out of fear of losing her, but out of gratitude for finding her. In that quiet moment, they both understood the same truth. This wasn't something to rush past or take lightly. This was something to protect, to build, to fight for on hard days and celebrate on good ones. She looked up at him, her eyes shining, and he smiled, soft, sure, unafraid. Without saying it out loud, they made a promise to keep choosing each other, to grow together, to love each other through tired mornings, unexpected storms, and all the ordinary days in between. They weren't dreaming of perfection. They were committing to effort, to patience, to a lifetime of small, intentional acts of love. And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, they both knew that this was the beginning of forever. The CEO who once helped her with the dishes had found a permanent home in her heart, and the single mom who thought she was failing had become the architect of a whole new way to love. Love doesn't always arrive with grand speeches or perfect timing. Sometimes it shows up quietly, rolling up its sleeves, standing at the sink, sharing the weight of ordinary moments. The CEO who once helped her with the dishes didn't just offer assistance. He offered presence. In those simple, unguarded moments, he found a permanent home in her heart. And the single mom who believed she was falling short slowly discovered the truth. She wasn't failing at all. She was learning, growing, and becoming the architect of a deeper, braver way to love. Their love wasn't built on status or rescue. It was built on kindness, patience, and the courage to meet each other where they truly were. Because the most powerful love stories aren't about being saved. They are about being seen, chosen, and loved in the everyday.